Paddy Pimblett, definitely the big standout here on the card. I mean, this was the highlight of the card was him and Molly McCann, who we'll talk about later.
Again, those
Yeah,
two.
yeah. And Paddy Pimblett gets it done. His toughest opponent in the UFC, Jordan Leavitt, he's able to get the submission win in round 2, 2 minutes 46 seconds in. Very nice looking uh, uh, rear naked choke. For some reason,
Yep.
I always want to say guillotine when it's rear naked and rear naked when it's a guillotine.
Yeah.
He had the arm locked up in the body triangle. I mean, it was a really nice little finish there for him. Finishing sequence started with that nasty knee.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. This was actually a pretty fun fight.
Mhm.
It was. I've been. I try not. I'm trying not to be. I'm not trying to be critical of Paddy Pimblett. I guess I have been, but it's more been critical of, I guess, just the hype and
Right.
the response that he seemed to get over his first couple fights in UFC, where he was fighting guys that were maybe UFC caliber. I mean, I don't even think Ben Ramini's in the company anymore, but then Kazula Vargas has kind of been just there.
Yeah.
This felt like this felt like a proper step up. It felt like, okay, good. We're giving him a legit opponent here. Jordan Leavitt, a tough guy, been on the Contender Series, has only lost once in the UFC. I believe that wasn't that to Claudio Puelles or am I?
Yeah, Claudio.
Yeah, so like that, Claudio is a really good fighter
Yeah.
himself. So, and this was a guy who maybe had a grappling advantage over Paddy, we thought. So it'd be interesting to see if he had to win a fight on the feet, how that might go. That wasn't really how the fight played out. Jordan Leavitt was very adamant about getting this fight to the ground. First round, a lot of clinching, a lot of work up against the cage, a lot of control time for Jordan Leavitt. We kind of know now, at least we think. Not sure what that does for him on the scorecards.
Right.
Into round 1, things pick up a little bit. A really nice end to the round for Paddy Pimblett. I would probably argue that got him the round.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Because again, if they're going off of damage, that was definitely the most statement part of that round.
Yeah.
Round 2 comes, and Paddy Pimblett able to really. I don't really remember how like the first half of his round went. To be honest with you, I kind of I feel like I remember round 1 so clearly, and round 2 I kind of don't. Fill in the blanks for me here because I know when the finishing sequence comes. But how did the first half of round 2 go in your eyes?
Yeah, Jordan still did what he basically did in round 1, push Paddy back to where he could get him on the fence, tried to clinch him up, tried to drag him down, but Paddy, much more successful in that clinch in the second round, did land that knee. That's what kind of started it, down to the ground, transitioning. Paddy very, very slick down there. That's what I wanted to see, was them two, not necessarily in the clinch like a lot of the first round, but on the ground. What are we going to do with these two? And Paddy showed that the skill set that he was known for in Cage Warriors, bringing it over now to the UFC. The way that you kind of already talked about it, but that he trapped that arm with the body triangle. You do not see people do that very often. And that really kind of secured that choke too. Because when you're only fighting with one hand versus two, you're probably not going to be able to fight it off. And he locked in that rear naked, got Jordan two tap, and then of course teabagged like it was Modern Warfare 2, as he so eloquently said in the
Twice.
post fight. Yes, two teabags. That's a pretty good number. That's about what I would do in Modern Warfare 2, I
Yeah.
suppose. I really just felt like, I don't know, fight week was a little weird between these two because they seemed a lot more respectful last night and kind of playful. They kind of laughed it off at the end, hugged, embraced, whatever. And then Paddy just really nailed the whole interview from start to
Oh
finish.
man.
Started very fun, talked about the teabagging and whatnot, but then, to his friend that passed away recently due to mental health issues and whatnot, and kind of really gave his platform that he's so looked at as a fun, crazy, quirky guy, the barstool guy, right? I thought that was a great part of the evening, but they didn't make that switch and be so serious and really talk about something that you don't hear about often, especially from athletes with his platform, because really Khalil Roundtree did great in a post-fight interview a few months ago, but Paddy did it there in the cage, which was even bigger on a bigger platform. Obviously, his following is huge. So for those, shout out Khalil Roundtree, of course, and Paddy Pimblett. What he did last night, I think, was a lot and raised his stock even more than what the performance did.
Yeah, I mean, I just was completely impressed.
Yeah.
This was the first time I walked away from a Paddy fight and was just glowing with positives. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, you can look at some stuff in the round 1 and round 2, and maybe you might have some pause. Maybe some of you thought he might just run through
Hmm.
Jordan Leavitt, but I feel like I get it. Everybody like we all love Paddy Pimblett. I mean, how can you
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
And especially after last night, I mean, that guy just aced everything. Like
Yes, he did.
the finish, everything in the aftermath. Yeah, like I mean, maybe he shouldn't have teabagged him, but I mean, he wasn't like directly over his head. It was just
That
it
was a
was
part of the lead up. It was gonna be a
yeah.
teabag or a twerk, you know what
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
mean, it is what yeah, you call for it, Jordan Leavitt didn't seem all that peeved about it. He
Right,
seemed to
yeah.
understand what he had, signed up for. And you're right, he gets pretty serious on the mic, and
Yeah.
he's known to do that. I believe he did that in his last, fight too. I don't remember. See, I don't know much. I'm not
Yeah.
very intertwined with the European culture, but he did have something to say, at his last fight that was very introspective, and
Mhm.
I know a lot of people in that area were really behind what he was talking about. I can't remember exactly what it's about, so I apologize. But here, this is something that strikes a chord with guys like us, I'm sure, where
Mhm.
it does feel like when it comes to mental health, we might be of this generation where a lot of people look at it like we're all kind of like babied, and
Mhm.
I don't know, like none of us know how to work or what. I don't know. You know how people kind of view our
Right.
generation, like we're.
Right.
But I kind of remember growing up, it was a lot of like man up, and
Yeah.
just, and I feel like that kind of stigma of like a guy trying to get help if he is having issues, um, was very much a part of growing up for us, and
Yeah.
it's just nice to see guys like Khalil, like Patty, use their platforms. These are some of the toughest guys in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, these are literal badasses who go in there and fight, put their lives on the line, their bodies on the line, and then they go in there and say, "If you're struggling, get help. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with getting help." And I just have a lot of respect for that. Um, but Dominic, I do want to ask you a little bit about Paddy Pimblett.
Mhm.
Just not even like who's next for him, because I do think I would love to see an opponent even better than Jordan Leavitt as his next opponent, but I'm not sure who that would be.
Yeah.
When you're in 155,
Phew.
we're,
Shark
we're
Tank.
getting we're getting closer and closer to the Shark Tank part of this. I mean, Jordan Leavitt might not have quite been a guy that I viewed as like a top 15 potential, but
Yeah.
um, it feels like after this, that's kind of the direction we're going. Is we're getting into those guys that have a lot of potential, higher ceilings, maybe.
Yeah.
But I want
I
to focus more on like when we should see Paddy Pimblett fight again, because in my eyes, you've done all these shows with him in London, and for obvious reasons. I mean,
yeah.
he's the biggest star on the card. He's the reason these fans are probably showing up. Yes, for Tom Aspinall, Molly McCann, sure, but Paddy Pimblett's the biggest guy in that region. He's their guy right now.
Yeah.
So to me, though, if you want to take the next step, take him to New York City in November. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that'd be the next big thing, right? He said he wants to fight one more time before the end of the year. We know that they're going to stack that card in November. You got to figure they'd want a guy like Paddy Pimblett to be on there, man. And it is just a matter. I've saw people already calling for top 15 and stuff. And, I'm not necessarily opposed, but I think there are just so many guys on the outside looking in that are still so good in this division that there's nothing wrong with Paddy getting one more and then top 15. He had no problem slow playing his way into the UFC, knowing when the time was right to come.
Mhm.
And he's going to take his time here in the UFC as well. And I really did feel like they've kind of leveled up each fight he's had. But Jordan Leavitt was like a significant step up, and it did make a lot of sense. And it showed in the octagon. It was a good fight. So I'm not going to necessarily. I am one to talk about rankings a lot for some guys, but I'm going to pause just because of how crazy this division is. Call me crazy, but I kind of like the idea of like a Paddy and like a Joel Alvarez type of fight.
Joe
Somebody like
Allen.
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
like someone that has been on the cusp of getting in. He lost that fight to Arman Saryuki, and so Arman obviously pressed forward Joel in the step back. But I just feel like that guy is still such a Swiss Army knife. The length that he has, his jujitsu, but he showed improved striking. Paddy going to be undersized, but very well rounded in his own right. No slouch on the ground. I think that would be a really fun fight. Again, maybe a fighter not a lot of people know about, but if you're really a hardcore fan and you look at the depth of this division, Alvarez is a legitimate like threat to get into the top 15 one day. I think that'd be a sick fight.
I
Something like that.
agree. I agree. I also think that fight might be a little bit too close to the sun.
Mm,
And again, this is just our differences in kind of where we probably
right.
view Paddy right now. I did see one guy kind of call him out on Twitter a little bit. Matt Favola, I think, would be a very
Ooh, that's a
interesting
good
next
fight.
opponent.
Yeah.
That's again, I would consider him a step up from Jordan Leavitt, but probably a step behind Joel Alvarez right now.
Yeah.
Favola, yes, he had like the 7-second knockout loss to Terrence McKinney, but make no mistake, the guy's very talented.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
talented and great wrestler. So I think that could be another just interesting dynamic. And you could easily sell that on a main card in New York City. I mean, Paddy Pimblett, especially now he's with Barstool, Barstool headquartered
In New
in
York.
New
Yeah.
York. And I loved having the Barstool kind
That
of
was awesome.
influence on the card. Dave Portnoy in the crowd, along with Robbie Fox and Cruz. So
Yeah.
it was just, it really added something, I thought, just having that kind of story throughout the card, seeing those guys with the wigs on and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't overbearing. It wasn't like a distraction, but it was just a nice addition. And I think if you brought it to New York City, you're going to have like all of Barstool there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
some of you may roll your eyes at that, but we're Barstool fans, so we would love to see that.
Mhm.
And I just think that that's the obvious card you put him and Molly on, who we'll talk about again in a little bit. But
Yeah.
to me, again, I want a step up. That's I don't like these like I don't like when a lot of fighters get like stagnant steps, like in
Mhm.
or lateral moves. Like if you win, I feel like you should be kind of moving up, and that's why I don't really care who the next opponent is. I hope it's like a Favola would make a lot of sense.
What if, like, a Terrence McKinney? Terrence fights August 6th. That would be an interesting
Yeah,
fight. They've
I
chirped
mean,
a little bit on Twitter in the
yeah,
past.
That is. I
That's a
love
fun
Terrence.
fight.
Love Terrence McKinney. You know, and
Yeah.
that I mean, that's really where we're getting into with
Yeah.
Paddy, right? And this is kind of where I start every time out. I'm going to be like, I don't know if he's going to win.
Yeah.
That's really the range we're getting into with Paddy, which maybe his fans aren't there yet. Like a lot of the people, maybe even more on the casual side, or just maybe love him so much and view him
Right.
as like a real like guy to maybe go and chase a title at some point.
Mhm.
But for me, like I'm gonna be so invested if Paddy starts fighting guys like that because
Oh, yeah.
I may even favor him to lose in a lot of those fights, and that would just be a very interesting dynamic because he's gonna be obviously the A side in any of those.
100%.
More